Close your eyes. Imagine a city at dawn. The sun barely peeks between buildings, and in that morning silence, someone pauses to wonder, why do we do what we do? That question, so simple, so deep, is the heartbeat of philosophy. Welcome to Everyday Philosophy, a gentle journey through the ideas that shape our daily lives. Over this journey, we'll walk together from ancient thinkers to modern dilemmas, from home to work to the streets we know. You don't need to be a scholar, just willing to pay attention. Because philosophizing isn't a luxury, it's a human need as natural as breathing. So relax, take a deep breath, and allow yourself to listen. What follows isn't a lecture. It's a conversation with yourself, guided by centuries of reflection. Sometime today, maybe while choosing breakfast or deciding to forgive that person, you practiced philosophy. You didn't notice, of course. No toga, no quote from Aristotle. But by questioning, weighing, feeling curious about the why of things, you stepped into the same river Socrates crossed in Athens in 423 BC. Philosophy didn't begin in classrooms. It began in marketplaces, kitchens, in gazes lifted to the sky. We've all been philosophers, because we've all sought meaning. And that search needs no books, only attention. Philosophy isn't an object. It's an act. And you have already done it. Picture a child asking, why is the sky blue? Then, and why do I exist? That subtle shift is the leap from curiosity to philosophy. The ancient Greeks knew this. For them, wonder was the origin of thought. Plato wrote in Theaetetus, wonder is the feeling of a philosopher, and philosophy begins in wonder. It wasn't about having answers, but feeling the discomfort of not knowing. Today, amid notifications and haste, that wonder gets buried, but never vanishes. Just one unexpected silence, one deep breath, and it returns. Because the question always comes back. Think of a grandmother who, while knitting, murmurs, life is like this thread, sometimes tangled, but always able to go on. That phrase isn't in any textbook, yet it's philosophy in its purest form. For centuries, ordinary people have cultivated wisdom without naming it. In Ghana, elders say, the wise person doesn't say everything they think, but thinks everything they say. In Japan, wabi-sabi teaches us to love imperfection. These aren't decorative quotes. They're remedies for an anxious, rushed world. And you have spoken them too, perhaps without realizing. Socrates walked through Athens' agora, not with scrolls, but with questions. What is justice? What is love? He offered no answers, only thought. Today, in a world that celebrates certainty, questioning has become uncomfortable. But philosophy doesn't seek certainty, it seeks clarity. And clarity comes when we stop repeating and start reflecting. On the subway, in a grocery line, in bed before sleep, those are our new agoras. And you, in your silent mind, are the new Socrates of your time. So don't think philosophy is distant. It doesn't live in dusty libraries. It lives in your choices, your doubts, your silences. From the first human who looked at the stars and asked, "What am I?" to you, reading this now, the chain was never broken. Because philosophizing isn't about collecting knowledge, it's about waking up. And in a world that tells us what to think, Philosophizing is, above all, reclaiming the freedom to think for ourselves. And that freedom you already have. You just need to use it. Should I have coffee or tea this morning? It seems trivial, but within it pulses an ancient question. What makes me free? In the 17th century, René Descartes secluded himself in a cold room, not to escape the world, but to find his essential self. I think, therefore I am, he wrote. Today, that same search happens in your kitchen, choosing between two mugs. Freedom isn't measured in grand gestures, but in small, conscious choices. And every time you choose with awareness, not habit, you are philosophizing. You pass a homeless person on the street and wonder, should I help? Unknowingly, you're now in dialogue with Immanuel Kant. In 1785, in Königsberg, he wrote of the categorical imperative, act only according to that maxim whereby you can, at the same time, will that it should become a universal law. In other words, what if everyone did what you're about to do? This isn't rigid morality. It's an invitation to see the other as your equal. And that invitation echoes every time your heart pauses before another's suffering. What is time? In the 4th century, St. Augustine pondered it in his Confessions. If no one asks me, I know. If I wish to explain it, I do not know. Today, you glance at the clock and feel it slipping away. At work, in traffic, online, time becomes an enemy. But the Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius in the 2nd century, reminded us, you don't own time, you only have this moment. Philosophy won't stop the clock, but it can return you to the present. And that gift costs nothing, only attention. Why do we suffer? The Buddha, in 5th century BCE India, taught that suffering arises from desire. Epictetus, a slave in Rome, said it's not events that disturb us, but our opinions about them. Today, when you lose a job or end a relationship, those same questions arise. We don't seek final answers, we seek comfort. And philosophy, far from cold, is an intellectual embrace, whispering, you're not alone. Others walked this darkness and left lights on. And then, the ultimate question, what comes after death? From ancient Egyptians filling tombs with sacred texts, to Heidegger in the 20th century speaking of being toward death, all have tried to peer beyond the veil. But philosophizing about death is an obsession with the end. It's as Montaigne wrote in Renaissance France, to philosophize is to learn how to die, so we may learn how to live. Because only by accepting finitude can we give value to every breath. Imagine a world without questions, where everything is accepted, without challenge, without the question, why, or the wonder, what if, that world existed and was called totalitarianism. In Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union, philosophy was silenced because critical thought threatens control. So philosophy isn't a pastime, it's resistance. Every time you think for yourself, you defy conformity. And in an age of algorithms telling us what to watch, buy, and believe, that resistance is more vital than ever. Philosophy gives us tools, not to be right, but to understand. In 5th century BCE Greece, Protagoras said, "Man is the measure of all things." He wasn't promoting selfishness, but the relativity of knowledge. Today, amid toxic online debates, this idea reminds us your truth isn't the only one. Philosophical empathy doesn't mean agreement, it means humble listening. And in a polarized world, that humility is revolutionary. Do you know why you feel empty after hours of digital entertainment? Because the human soul isn't fed by stimuli, but by meaning. Viktor Frankl, in Nazi concentration camps, discovered that survivors weren't the strongest, but those who found a why. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he wrote, "When we can no longer change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." That's philosophy's medicine. It doesn't fix the world, but strengthens the one who lives in it. Philosophy also teaches us to live with uncertainty. In the 3rd century BCE, Greek skeptics proposed suspending judgment, not from indifference, but prudence. "I don't know," they'd say, and in that phrase, found peace. Today, bombarded by opinions presented as absolute truths, that attitude is liberating. Admitting we don't know everything isn't weakness. It's the door to curiosity, to learning, to true wisdom. Because only those who recognize their ignorance can truly begin to walk. Finally, philosophy connects us. Not just to the past, but to everyone like you seeking meaning. When you read Spinoza in 17th century Amsterdam, or Simone de Beauvoir in 20th century Paris, you're not alone. You're in a conversation spanning centuries. And that invisible community of seekers is an antidote to modern loneliness. Because philosophizing isn't isolation. It's recognizing we're all made of the same questions and the same wonder. Without philosophy, decisions become automatic. We choose by impulse, habit, or others' expectations. In the 20th century, Hannah Arendt coined the banality of evil while observing Adolf Eichmann at trial. He wasn't a monster, just a man who never thought. That's the warning. Without reflection, morality fades. And in the age of AI, where algorithms decide for us, the absence of philosophy isn't just risky, it's dangerous. Because without questions, there is no humanity. Without philosophy, language grows poor. We stop saying justice and say what the law says. We stop saying love and say relationship. Words lose depth and with them the soul. In classical Greece, logos wasn't just word. It was reason, order, meaning. Today, reducing everything to function drains logos, and with it, our ability to name what truly matters. Philosophy, then, is a fight for language and for the soul that lives within it. Without philosophy, pain doesn't transform. It's only buried. In the 1st century CE, Seneca wrote letters to friends on facing loss. He offered no easy comfort, only understanding. Today, in a culture that flees suffering through distraction, pain accumulates, becoming anxiety, emptiness. Philosophy doesn't cure pain, but alchemizes it, turns it into knowledge, empathy, the root of an authentic life. Without it, we suffer, without learning. Without philosophy, progress becomes blind. We build technologies we don't understand, systems we don't question, lives we don't inhabit. In 1955, Einstein warned, Technology has surpassed our humanity. He was right. But the solution isn't rejecting progress. It's accompanying it with wisdom. Philosophy is the lighthouse asking, where are we going and why? Without that compass, we run, but don't advance. We only exhaust ourselves. Imagine a world without philosophy. No questions, no wonder, no search. It would be a world of perfect efficiency and empty souls. A world where everyone eats, sleeps, works, but no one stops to watch the stars. That world already exists in fragments. But you, by asking this question, already resist it. Because philosophizing is remembering we're not machines, we're beings who long for meaning. And that longing is what keeps us human. At the breakfast table, when a parent says, "Think before you speak," they don't quote Socrates, but they channel him. Family is the first school of ethics. Not with chalkboards or exams, but with gestures, glances, silences that also teach. In ancient Greece, the oikos, the household, was where character formed before entering the polis. Today, though cities grow and rhythms speed up, home remains the soul's laboratory. There we learn what's just, not because it's imposed, but because we see it lived. Picture a grandmother who, when serving food, sets aside a portion for a lonely neighbor. She doesn't call it altruism, but that's exactly what it is. In the 4th century BCE, Aristotle wrote in his Nicomachean Ethics that virtue isn't taught with words, but through habits. Generosity, patience, honesty are sown in daily acts. When an older sibling shares a toy, when a mother listens without judgment, when a child asks, "Why are you sad?" there, quietly, practical philosophy blooms. Family disagreements are also philosophical ground. Not toxic fights, but moments where someone says, "I disagree, but I want to understand you." In the 18th century, David Hume claimed reason is the slave of the passions, but at home, with love, we learn to balance them. A father who apologizes, a daughter who explains calmly, a grandfather who says, "Maybe I was wrong." These are acts of rational humility no book teaches, like life itself. Family is where theory becomes flesh. Family traditions, though they seem like simple routines, are full of meaning. Lighting a candle in winter, telling bedtime stories, passing down recipes, these are ways of resisting forgetting. In Jewish philosophy, zeket, memory, is a sacred duty. In Japan, kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold, symbolizes that wounds are part of our story. In your home, you may not name these ideas, but by caring for what was, by honoring fragility, you live them. And in that care lies a silent ethics. Finally, family teaches us the deepest paradox, to love without possessing. In the 20th century, Simone Weil wrote that attention is the purest form of generosity. At home, that attention means listening without interrupting, respecting others' dreams, allowing growth. It's not about creating clones, but supporting wings. Because true family philosophy doesn't seek control, it seeks companionship. And in that companionship, we find our first lesson in freedom and our most lasting one. When you arrive at your office, factory, or cafe, you don't just enter a place of labor. You step into an ethical space. Because work isn't just about earning money, it's how you do it. In the 5th century BCE, Confucius taught that well-done work is soul cultivation. Today, reviewing a report honestly, not stealing time or resources, treating a colleague with dignity, you're not being nice, you're practicing philosophy. Work, rightly understood, is a school of character. Imagine a nurse who, after a 12-hour shift, stops to hold the hand of a frightened patient. Her contract doesn't require it, but her humanity does. In the 17th century, Blaise Pascal wrote, "The heart has reasons that reason knows nothing of." At work, those reasons turn tasks into vocation. This isn't about glorifying suffering. It's about finding meaning even in routine. Because when work honors others, it honors us too. What is a just leader? In the Republic, Plato dreamed of philosopher kings, not the most powerful, but the wisest and most selfless. Today, a philosophical leader doesn't shout orders. They listen. They don't hoard credit. They share opportunity. They don't see employees. They see people. And even if you're not a manager, you practice moral leadership, rejecting gossip, admitting mistakes, supporting those who stumble. At work, as in life, ethics isn't an adjective, it's a daily action. Work stress doesn't come only from workload, but from disconnection from purpose. In the 1st century, Seneca wrote, "We don't lack time, we waste it." Today, we spend hours on tasks we don't believe in, and the soul tires. Philosophy won't erase obligations, but it helps us ask, does this bring me closer to who I want to be? If the answer is no, that awareness is already an act of freedom. Because working without reflection is surviving, working with meaning is living. Ultimately, work mirrors society. When we accept exploitation as normal, stay silent out of fear, or prioritize profit over people, we repeat historical errors. But when we insist on fairness, respect, balance, we plant a better world. In the 19th century, Marx dreamed of work that liberates, not alienates. That dream still lives in every ethical choice you make on the job. Because philosophizing at work is humanizing it. Walk through your neighborhood at dusk. Notice, the baker greets everyone by name. A young person yields to an elder. Someone picks up litter. These gestures aren't in laws, yet they hold the city together more than concrete. In 5th century BC Athens, the polis wasn't just a place, it was a community of reflective citizens. Today, the city remains an ethical organism, and each of us a conscious cell. Urban philosophy isn't announced, it's practiced in silence. Public space is a field of moral decisions. Do you meet a stranger's eyes? Respect quiet on transit? Leave a bench clean? Small acts, rich with meaning. In the 18th century, Rousseau wrote that freedom ends where another's begins. In the city, that rule is tested every minute. It's not about perfection, but consideration. Because a city without empathy grows cold, no matter how many lights it has. Urban diversity is itself a philosophical lesson. On one block, beliefs, languages, stories coexist. How do we live together without uniformity? The Stoics in imperial Rome proposed cosmopolitanism where all citizens of the world. Today, that idea echoes when you greet someone who dresses differently, defend a stranger's rights, reject prejudice disguised as opinion. Cities aren't built with walls, but with bridges of recognition. Protests, crowded plazas, voices demanding justice are also philosophy in action. In 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. didn't just march. He reasoned with his nation's soul, quoting Augustine, "An unjust law is no law at all." The city is where ethics becomes collective. And you, by voting, signing, talking to neighbors, join that public dialogue. Because philosophizing isn't just thinking, it's participating. And the city is where freedom is practiced or lost. At day's end, as lights turn on and noise fades, the city whispers an ancient question. How do we live together without destroying each other? The answer isn't in a building, but in millions of daily choices. To yield, listen, care, respect. From Roman forums to modern parks, the challenge remains: build community. And you, with every conscious step, are part of that building. Because philosophy isn't far away, it's on the corner, waiting for you. Thank you for walking with me through the streets, homes, and hearts where philosophy quietly lives. If this podcast brought you a moment of calm, of reflection, or simply rest with meaning, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to Sleep Philosophy. Each episode is a pause in a world that forgot how to breathe. Until next time, may your questions guide you and your answers surprise you. Goodbye and sweet thoughts.